I was getting. Yes. We're getting get started at the Portland Parks Board meeting starting at 5:01 p.m. January 9th, 2024. If we can please have the roll call.
Dr. Corbett,
Present.
Ilana,
Here.
Bonnie,
Present.
Casey, six, David,
Here.
Chris,
Present.
Adam, Adrian, Aaron,
Present.
Sabrina, Ali, Ali, Sue-Ann,
Here.
Jonathan, Matt,
Here.
Patty,
Here.
Jessica.
Here.
Thank you. Roll is taken.
Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and get started with public comments. And we have Matt, please come on and have a seat right here. When you're ready, you can go ahead and get started. Please refrain from giving any of your personal information out.
Sure.
All right, whenever you're ready.
All right. So I did honestly think that last December was going to be the last month that you'd see me. But then right after my comment at the end of last month, the board chair shared some information that I had not been previously privy to. So here I am again. I just have to make a comment about that. I'm going to start actually with the end of my comment, just so you know where I'm going. Said I understand your plates are probably full. I apologize for taking up yet more of your time. But I believe it was a mistake for the board to advise the park director's office that this particular drone policy can't be changed by the Parks Department. I also believe it was a mistake for the board to exclude me from the working group's discussion of this topic, which happened without my knowledge. So anyway, back to the top. So I've said on multiple occasions that I never expected the board to take up my particular case, whether for or against, and that I was primarily here for the sake of getting things into easily accessible public record. But in the end, if I've understood things correctly, what appears to have happened is that there apparently was some discussion that happened perhaps by a working group of board members outside of these meetings. I wasn't notified that that discussion would be happening, nor was I invited to participate. I believe I should have been invited to participate. And I have to ask again, where exactly is the quote forum for public discussion that the city council directed this board to provide? Moreover, the board seems to have reached the conclusion that PPNR drone policy can only be changed on a citywide basis. I may be misinterpreting what the board said. I don't know for sure. But what I will say is that existing policy, which is in the city code itself, Title 20, straight from the city council, is that drone use is prohibited in parks. Drones are not allowed to take off and land in Portland parks. Now that's a policy that applies to Portland parks only. So I don't know if that qualifies as citywide, but it certainly seems like an effective policy to me. Drones cannot take off and land in Portland parks. There's also a separate bureau policy, which is not a statement of the city council, but which the Parks Department has the right to create, also for Title 20, where the Parks Department has decided that film industry drones can be permitted to take off and land on parks property if they, fill out the appropriate application and pay the appropriate fees. And this is true regardless of when, where, or how long they intend to fly, but I'm not going to get into that part again. This is Parks Department bureau policy. This particular bureau policy is what allowed what happened last May to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. And so I have to ask, is it really the position of this board that the Parks Department has no power to modify its own bureau policy? Because such a modification can only be made on a citywide basis. I'm not even sure what that means. It seems from my perspective to either make no sense or to be incorrect.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have any other folks here for public comments? Possibly online or in person? Not seeing any hands. We're moving forward with general announcements. Any general announcements from the board members? Thank you. Moving forward with approved December meeting minutes. Do we have a motion? You have a second?
Second.
Any discussion or corrections?
I think there's a mistype here on page 3 where there was a comment saying that Lauren commented that Clean and Safe does not want to continue a partnership with us if there is a fence. I think it meant if there is not a fence.
When? Was that?
That's
edit?
right. Yeah, Swen's correct. Swen's correct about that.
Thank you.
If
Sure
there's
that
not-
that has been noted. Are there any other corrections, additions to the meeting minutes?
This is Sabrina.
Yes, go
I-
ahead.
I noticed that I was left off of the list of board members who are present at the last meeting.
Thank you. I believe that's being noted. Any others? If everybody's ready, all those that are looking forward to approve the meeting minutes with the corrections or amendments, please go ahead and say aye or raise your hand, please.
I
Are you able to? Did you record that? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you so much. Moving forward with the director's report, Director Wong.
Thank you. So as always, I can't underscore how many gems there are in our borough monthly report. I know it's lengthy, but please read it, and if you haven't already. Today, I just want to highlight a few items. On December 13th, City Council unanimously approved the 2022-23 Parks Levy Annual Report and the Parks Levy Oversight Committee Annual Report. You can watch the presentation and read the report online. And links can also be found in the monthly report under the Sustainable Future heading. In the coming months, the report will be presented to key internal and external stakeholders, including Urban Forestry Commission, recreation supervisors and managers, and at the Portland Parks and Recreation Leadership Team. And in alignment with our commitment to language access, the executive summary and Parks Levy Oversight Committee Annual Report will be translated and available in Spanish, Chinese, Russian, and Vietnamese, and available online once translations have been completed. I also wanted to highlight that last month, Commissioner Rubio and the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability announced that an unanticipated additional $540 million in PSEP revenue is expected over the next 5 years, and how these new resources will be used. The funds will provide some immediate budget relief and future protection for the city's general fund, and are being used to support the goals of the Clean Energy Fund. In the first round of awards announced, Urban Forestry's Arborist Trainee Program is being funded. The announcement also referenced a second and upcoming set of uses for these funds. These are being developed now as a part of the budget development process for the new fiscal year, which begins July 1, 2024. They include $100 million for tree protection and maintenance for 5 years, which will enable the city to maintain street trees, which is a significant change from the current policy, wherein maintenance has been the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. This is a huge, huge win for the city if it is approved by the PSEP board. It's significant to note that most, if not nearly all, US cities of this Portland size or larger currently maintain city-owned tree assets like street trees. So we're sort of catching up, as it were. this longstanding policy is a known burden on property owners, especially those who are experiencing low income and living in low canopy. We're really excited about the positive implications for equity in tree distribution and urban forest service to communities and for public health. So more to come on that. My understanding is that PSEF committee meets on January 18th. And they're expected to vote on this and other related proposals. So we'll be keeping our eye on that and reporting back to the board. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet because we've got a packed agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Opening the floor to the board, are there any questions? Either raise your hand if you're online, and if you are in person, please go ahead and turn your table tent to the side so I can call on you.
I don't have a thing to raise, so
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
thank you for the report. 2 questions. The permit that's limiting access to the West Willamette Greenway Trail. Curious, seems kind of unique. Is that a function of the easement maybe that we hold?
Lauren, can you speak to that?
Could you repeat the question? I couldn't
Sure.
understand you.
Sure. So at the McCormick Pier condos, the Willamette Greenway Trail there was a agreement to continue to limit access. Is that a function of some sort of limitation on use there and an easement or something? Because I don't think that's pretty common on other greenway access or trails throughout the city.
Yeah, that's right. It's not. And actually, Todd, maybe you can speak to the agreement that, because Dylan is really the one that
Yep.
has been working on this, not me, but it's not common for us to limit the access for anyone. Typically.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit. So our trails oftentimes are required when the development happens that the adjacent property owner, similar to like a sidewalk, dedicate property for the public trail. And then it varies depending on whether they have to actually build it, they have to maintain it. And so in this case, there are some responsibilities for the condominiums that are adjacent there to have maintenance responsibilities and can have some closures overnight on some of them. And it's really about the security incidents that they've been having down there. So they've been looking to enhance their private security and other security measures in the overnight hours. And so that's what it's related to. And so this is kind of like a temporary mitigation measure that we've been trying to do to like reset kind of the security profile down there, but it's still open public trail. And this is temporary.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to get more information offline if you want.
If I could also, I just want to note that Jen Cairo put in the chat that the PSEF meeting is January 25th. So we'll correct that in the minutes. And I just wanted to say it verbally for folks who are tracking.
Thank you. Adrian,
Yeah, quick question. Not sure if all that excess fund is committed by the things that have already, were listed in the press release. And, there's been a couple of rounds where they've found more and more money, coming out of this collection. So is infrastructure allowed to, or capital allowed to be covered under those funds? Because I was just also thinking of larger park maintenance needs and the climate resilience that they bring, your community centers, et cetera, different things that we could do.
Yeah, thanks for that, Adrian. Actually, we had submitted some proposals that sort of passed the first round of muster that fit that bill. For instance, we will be receiving, I believe it's around $7 million for some retrofitting work at Mount Scott Community Center, which is currently under construction. So it's going to help offset the costs there. So that is definitely to a certain degree eligible. This is for HVAC and other amenities within the community center that will make it more resilient and for utilization as a community hub. And we've also, there's other proposals that are under consideration. For instance, the conversion of gas power to electric power blowers is another proposal. Yeah, so I haven't given the full list, and you're absolutely right. There's quite a few other proposals that are under consideration. I'll make sure to include that in my next monthly report.
Thank you, Lauren.
So, yeah, Adina's absolutely right. We are gonna get almost $7 million in funding from Mount Scott. And it's for solar panels and, and, resiliency through our HVAC, et cetera. And we're hoping that going forward, we can continue that pattern for all the community centers that need that kind of work.
Thank you, Lauren. Any other questions from the board? Chris, go ahead.
I see that the internal team and the PSU partners have completed wave 3 of the analysis for Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, and that they'll be doing an internal presentation to PPR and our staff on January 25th. And I was wondering if we could possibly at the next board meeting or at a working group meeting also get those analysis in February and just look at how it will be informing the iteration of the community needs survey moving forward.
My understanding is that they plan to go to the community engagement working group. We can talk about whether or not we need to come on in February as well. But I do know that as of right now, we have a pretty full agenda planned. So I'll confer with Dr. Corbin and Alana to see how we want to address that, but you'll definitely hear about it. If not February, then March.
Thank you. If I can make a segue into that, because I did get some information. So the last month we did vote as a board to move forward with an emergency shelter letter to Monoma County. On Friday, Director Long did inform me that we're gonna hold off from actually submitting the letter. And I believe on April, we're gonna actually try to have Monoma County come in and present to us. So I hope that is satisfactory for the board. After that presentation, we can recalibrate the letter if we see fit and move forward from there. So if there's any objections or questions regarding that process, I'm opening the floor for the board to talk about it. Lynn, go ahead.
Pick it back up with what Chris asked for. Does it make any difference if actually the board engage with the January presentation, the PSU wave 3? Does that make sense? Rather than
The
pushing out
concern
to
would
the-
be that if we invited the board, that there could be quorum, in which case it would be a public meeting. So there is that concern, but I think presenting to the community engagement working group is probably the next best choice. And also to just Corbin, as an add-on to what Corbin said about the letter, it doesn't preclude the board from sending the letter after the fact, right? It was just more the Office of Government Relations has requested that we give them an opportunity to present initially. And then if we still need to send the letter or a modified version, we can do so. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Sabrina, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to hear that they'll be coming to a board meeting so that we can engage with folks. And my initial question is, how can I and probably the rest of the board best prepare for that meeting? And I guess that would be more of a question to the county on who is planning on coming and what information they're planning on sharing so that we can ensure that we're able to fully engage with them and be prepared to have, questions or comments. And so maybe if we could make a request for them to either like send a slide deck out early or even for me just to get a good understanding of what that time is going to look like so that I could best prepare to engage with them and their team.
Yes, we're working with our colleagues at the Office of Government Relations who are serving sort of as the liaison to Multnomah County. So we just made that connection. And so as we work with them to coordinate, we'll relay that to them Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Director Long, unless there's anything else to add. Yep. All right, thank you. So moving to the working group reports. We have the community engagement working group. Are there any questions? Or would the chair of the community engagement working group like to say anything?
I would. One of the things that was shared with us is a community engagement opportunity. There is the Portland Monuments Project Public Survey. I will drop the link to that in the chat. And so thank you, Aaron, for sending that our way, and just kind of an announcement that if any other board members do have other opportunities for us to be engaged, or for the communities that we work with to be engaged, feel free to send it my way, and I'll make sure to share that out with the group as a whole.
So much. Moving to the Board Affairs Working Group, which did not meet, if I remember correctly, in December. So there's nothing to report on that. And then we have the Sustainability Working Group that is now the back. And there was a slide deck sent out along with some notes. And Bonnie, are there anything that you would like to say?
No, we had the second of the BAC meet first.
We have the first.
But we had the first of the BAC meetings, and we will have a second one. I don't have the dates with me.
This Thursday.
Oh, yes, that's right. It's in 2 days. And then the third will happen
After that.
Yeah, and Maya Spencer has been coordinating that process, and those are public meetings. It includes the Financial Sustainability Working Group as well as labor representatives. We don't have the same degree of other community members as we've had in the past, but you know, I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to get those back in, and the youth, including the youth members.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
And thank you, Todd. He noted that February 6th is the date of the third BAC meeting.
Thank you. You said that public, you know what time?
Yeah, they're 5 to 7.
5 to 7. All right, thank you so much, Bonnie. All right, moving forward with the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group. Is there anything to report, or are there any questions from the board? Right, moving forward, I believe that is everything regarding the working group reports. Moving forward with the Portland Parks Foundation report. Hello, Jessica, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Corbin. I sent over an update about an hour and a half ago, so I'm sure you all have read it. But more importantly, within that update is actually an overview of our 2024 Friends and Allies programming. And there's a lot of key dates in there that relate back to award cycles that we have to nominate volunteer, emerging leaders, as well as small grants. And then we also even have a date for our spring summit, which celebrates volunteerism and emerging leaders. And welcome all of you to attend. It's a great way to connect with community members who are actively involved in our parks and recreation system. It's very celebratory in nature and just highlights all of the work that's being done. So when you have a moment, if you want to just calendar in some of those dates, that's great. And I do encourage you, I will send along as our award cycles open and our small grants. I'll make sure to send them out to this group, and please feel free to nominate, to send it over to your community as well. And that's kind of the bigger piece in there. We are also soon putting together an opening for a development manager. So keeping your eyes peeled for that too. And if anybody's interested that you know, I would love to talk to them. if they want to learn a little bit more about the position. So I'll be sending a bunch of exciting opportunities your way. And I also would love to talk to you, Alana and Dr. Corbin, just about an ex officio member on our board. As I think I said in the last meeting, it is a important position in the sense that you get to vote too. So you're not just there to listen, but you do have an influence in the direction that we go. So I will follow up with both of you and maybe we can get something together.
Wonderful. We were just having a conversation about that. With that said, any board members who are interested in that ex officio position, please go ahead and email us. And we will reach out and see how this works out for everybody. So thank you so much for that. And I'm opening the floor for any questions or comments. And the first one we have is Bonnie. Go ahead, please.
Thanks for the report, Jessica. For the position that you're hiring, the development manager, is that development as in capital development or development as in fundraising?
Fundraising.
Thank you.
But
Because
you will
very
get to
different
work
skill
on
sets.
some capital projects.
Very different skill
fundraising.
sets.
Yes.
So I wanted to
No,
clarify that.
fundraising. Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
And then I can also, we have just a job description, in a sense, a board member job description that might be helpful to send over to you to share with everyone as well.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Perfect, share it with you. Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Any questions? Just making sure. Moving forward, we are a little early. And I don't know how this is gonna complicate things because we have a unique meeting today. We are a joint meeting with the Portland Parks Board, the Urban Forestry Commission, and the Portland Utility Commission. And we are gonna be focusing on the Natural Resource Service Delivery Work Plan, which will be presented. Are they here for the presentation? Because we are like really about,
Very early.
yeah, we're about 20 minutes before the fast.
I don't think Dawn is here.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Well, this opens up a space. Opens up a space for the board to talk.
Was she planning on joining us virtually or in
She
person?
is, yeah. I can email Pug.
Yeah,
and see
text
if-
her and tell her that we're ready, that we,
for early meeting.
our agenda.
Okay.
For
We were
once.
efficient. We were efficient.
So if I can make an amendment to the agenda and open this up as a open forum for board members to hear any concerns, bring up any topics that you would like to talk about. We're gonna be very fluid today. And I'm opening the floor. Bonnie, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Corbin. Is somebody gonna follow up with the community member and his drone concerns? Because I think he's clearly very frustrated and I mean, I don't know whether it's. Is somebody gonna follow up with him?
There has been follow-up with staff,
Yeah,
right?
we've followed up with him. He's not happy with what he's hearing. I know that I did receive recently a briefing from our customer service supervisor with a proposal, and I've requested a meeting. So I'm expecting to have a briefing, an internal briefing with staff around their proposal about how to move forward with drone policy. So hopefully we'll have something to report back to the board and to this individual. But yeah, he has come back to the board on multiple occasions and is just not happy with what the policy is and also the fact that we have less control over it than we would like, so.
Well, and I mean, because he did state just today that he felt we could adjust the policy, which I'm like, we cannot,
Yeah.
right? We're not a policy setting board.
Right.
And so I think some of those things, I hope can, even if they're not satisfying, can be made a little bit clearer, I hope.
Yeah, I will continue to help to clarify what the board's, role is and what they cannot do. It's unfortunate that he was dissatisfied with coming here, not being a part of the process. And but we have been engaging with him for quite a while on this topic, multiple times.
Just really quickly, Patty, you have a question regarding this?
different topic.
Alana, is this regarding
Just
this
a
topic?
quick follow-up.
Please go ahead.
So
I just want to make sure.
I just want to make sure that I'm hearing where we're at correctly. It sounds like there is potentially a review of policy happening. There may be more information being shared with the board and with him, depending on what you hear from staff. So I get the sense that he doesn't think his comments have led to anything, and it may be that we want to clarify with him that there is actually a review happening because of his comments. Does he understand that piece of it?
That was not shared.
Okay.
That's very new.
Got it.
I received the memo within the last few days.
Okay.
And now it's on public record, so.
And now it's on public
like,
record, so
everyone knows.
hopefully he's listening, since he left.
Mhm.
But I do think it's important as we think about the role of the board, we're not a policy setting board, right, Bonnie? We don't have the ability to change this, but we are a place where his grievances were able to be aired so that you can review that policy. It feels like things, while moving much more slowly than I think he would prefer, are actually moving in the way that they're supposed to occur, which is great.
Maybe I should clarify, it's not so much a review of the policy, right? Because the policy is city policy, it would be a review of Parks and Recreation practice.
Thank you.
And also to clarify what he was saying regarding working groups. Working groups are not public, and we also don't hold a forum, so in our working groups, we don't vote on anything. It is where we work on whatever comes up before the board, and that can be brought in front of the board and in front of the public. And so, just so you understand that we are not voting or having conversations outside of the gaze of this public forum. Any other follow-up questions regarding that particular issue?
I just got a text from Dawn, she's coming down now, so she's in the building.
Wonderful. All right, get your questions or concerns here as soon as possible. Okay, Patty, go ahead, please.
I would just like an update on the Grant Park Bowl, because we know that Commissioner Ryan approved that they're gonna have, but they have a new turf. And I guess the curious is, how did we make that happen so fast, and how did they get paid for?
Todd?
Sure.
Todd,
What was the last comment? How did what get paid for?
The bowl at Grant, the turf.
Yeah, sure. I'll just give you kind of an overview update. So we gave a temporary permit of entry to Portland Public Schools, who's paying for the restoration of the synthetic turf field. We had made enough progress, I think, in our negotiations. They've requested, and their PPS board has taken position that they want a 40-year lease on the bowl. And so we've been in negotiations with them over that lease. We're very close to concluding those negotiations that I think will meet everyone's needs. PPS will be making all of the repairs, maintenance, improvements in the future. The neighborhood was really interested in making sure there's public access for the upper field and the bowl, of which the upper field is partially owned by Parks and partially owned by PPS. And PPS inappropriately has been locking that field. And so we're going to get that back open. And yeah, so we're very close. There's also been some historic sports user groups like Portland Youth Soccer Association and East Portland Lacrosse, other non-Portland public school sports groups that have historically used the bowl. And so they've also been recognized in this tentative lease agreement that we've got to make sure that there's publicly available hours, both just to walk around the track like a park, but also the sports user groups could have access.
So the question I have is that it's about perception. And, this was all in the press, and then the whole parents and that, if you scream loud enough, and if you're in the right neighborhood, it can happen. So is there going to be something so people really know what's happening, how the field got paid for it, because it really isn't Parks, it's this whole lease. I'm just putting it out there because there is a perception issue.
For
Yeah, that way.
For Portland Public Schools.
No, the general public for parks and Portland Public Schools, because, you come out there, well, the press, that we have no money. But all of a sudden we have now turf and people don't really know how it got paid for and how it happened. Or was it
Sure.
because the grant community screamed loud enough, wrote enough letters, came to the board meeting and they got what they.
Right. Yeah, we can for sure, once we finalize this lease, both, put public information out, on our website, or I'm sure there'll be media inquiries about the framework of the agreement. We can make it sure that Portland Public Schools is paying for all those costs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Jen. I see a hand up.
Hello. Some of the forestry commissioners are attending for the next agenda item. One of them is listed as an attendee and should be moved to panelist, and that's Megan Vandemar.
She declined to serve as a panelist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now she accepted.
Oh, never mind. Now she accepted.
Wonderful. Jonathan.
Okay, good.
So thank you. Jonathan, I thought I saw your hand up. Since we have a little time, if you wanted to ask a question or.
Yeah, no, it was a quick one. I was looking, and hey, Jessica, I can't see you. You're around the corner, but hello, Happy New Year. The last few of these, there had been a director update with no update. Is there an update there?
There's an informal update.
Okay.
It is likely that I will be stepping into the director role. There has been an internal hiring process and interview process. It is formally being voted on at our January board meeting, and then we will start to announce it. And you read my memo, so good job, both of you. I was wondering if anybody was gonna pick up on that.
Yeah, well, I was hoping that I wasn't like stepping anything, and this was an opportunity to at least informally clap and congratulate you.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. We still have some time, just holding any space if any of the board members have any questions or concerns or thoughts that they would like to put forward. Now's the time.
I'd really like to encourage that because we want to make sure that we leave enough space for our partners from Club and UFC to join us, so.
Going once? Yeah. Matt?
Question about the potential Slabtown Park. There was a reference in I think your report to kind of changing the paradigm as to how they're approaching that. And can you say, is that driven by maybe that's a better direction? Does that mean negotiations are stalling? And you may not be able to share much in this space, and I appreciate that.
Right, thank you for that caveat as well. I think both Lauren is still on the line. The question was around Slabtown.
I can jump in on this one if you want.
Great, thanks, Todd.
Yeah, so we're continuing to negotiate with the property owner about kind of realizing the vision of the master plan to have a public park on that identified parcel. And we remain optimistic. So that's where we are today. Hopefully we'll have more later in the month.
Sue-Ann?
Follow-up question here. I also read that Park's been able to acquire 2 small parcels, one in John's Landing area, St. John's area. And these are small parcels that are very close to neighboring kind of parks-like environment. And when we as parks acquire these smaller parcels, because it's optimistic, there's some advantage to acquire these. How does that play into a little bit similar to Slabtown? We are bringing in more property under parks.
how does that also weigh into budget that is going to perhaps needing to maintain them, or are we using them as almost like an investment so that we can trade it with someone else later? That's my general question.
Looks like we have.
So I don't know who put their hand up first, but Lauren, do you want to speak to the parcel? 2 parcels?
Yeah, sure. Swin, are you talking about Baltimore Woods, about like Edison Street and Reno Avenue? Is that what you're talking about? That area?
Yes.
Okay, so that property is about 0.37 acres of property adjacent to the Baltimore Woods Natural Area, and it has the parcel was acquired because it has very large native oak trees that are very slow growing in oak savanna. That's a rare type for the Portland metro area. So this was a strategic natural area acquisition for us. You know, whenever we acquire things, we go through a ranking criteria that implements our, especially for natural areas, our 2009 natural area acquisition strategy. And it has to meet certain criteria. So in this case, the property met 5 of the criteria, which was that it contains this oak habitat that's underprotected in the region, oak savanna habitat. It also contained environmentally sensitive habitat types with other types of rare plant communities. So it was good. It was good in that way. It also was accessible to the North Portland Greenway Trail, so that was another reason we acquired it. And it was under imminent threat for development. And then the final one was it improves the access to existing natural areas that we have. So with all those things combined, we decided it was a valuable addition to Baltimore Woods. We purchased it for $205,000 and are stabilizing it for $50,000, which is always included in our acquisition costs. Our closing costs on that are about $10,000, and so the total request was for $265,000. Is that helpful?
I understand these are great numbers. Are we looking at different parts of funding where are we taking away opportunity to take care of some of the deferred maintenance budget, or if this is a totally different pot of money that we are utilizing and not digging ourselves deeper into the deferred maintenance number?
Yeah, so it is a different pot of money. Acquisitions are granted by SDC allocations, so system development charges, which is for expansion of the park facilities. So it's a different pot of money. With that, I will say that when we do these acquisitions, we always determine an operations and maintenance budget associated with it and consider that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Todd, I saw your hand up. Are we good? Wonderful. All right. All right. Thank you so much. So we're going to move forward with the Natural Resource Service Delivery Work Plan, which is the next agenda item. I do want to start off our conversation by acknowledging that we have 3 advisory bodies with us today. We have the Portland Parks Board, which we are holding our normally scheduled public meeting. We are also welcoming in the Urban Forestry Commission and the Portland Utility Board. They are all here. Director Long from Portland Parks and Recreation and Director Don Uchiyama, love it, from BES are both here to give an update on the direction and the process of the ongoing natural resource service delivery assessment and to share some information about the upcoming steps for that work. So I will be facilitating, and with that said, if you are in the room and a Portland Parks board member, as we've been doing before, please put your table tent to the side if you have any questions. If you're with the Urban Forestry Commission, if you can please raise your hand if you're in person. If you're online, please raise your hand and I will be calling on you, and that's along with the Portland Utility Commission as well. And wonderful for having you here. It looks like we're testing out some hands already. Before we get started, Megan, is there something that you would like to say?
Just following your instruction.
I was exactly, thank you, Adina.
Yeah, I just, well, I thought this was an opportunity for you to know who was here from each word, so I put my hand down now. Hi.
Well, thank you for coming here today. Due to a scheduling presentation situation, we were able to accommodate everybody at this meeting, and you are all welcome, and I will do my best. So board members, if you can help me out, if you see that I'm missing a hand somewhere, please let me know. I welcome that. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Director Long and Director.
I think that I'm gonna kick this off. Yeah, Dina and I are going to share our remarks, so we'll be handing it back and forth. But first, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Corbin, for hosting this meeting. I know it's an effort to bring 3 different groups together. And I'd also like to thank members of the Parks Board, the Urban Forestry Commission, and Portland Utility Board for coming together this evening. We really appreciate the opportunity to meet with all 3 of you in one meeting. And we also really appreciate the work that you do to guide both BES and Portland Parks and Recreation in fulfilling our missions and protecting and restoring Portland's unique landscapes, and also integrating all of the community values into everything that we do. And we also especially want to thank you for modifying your schedule time. It was, I think, really important for us all to be in the room together to hear this kickoff discussion together, and I really appreciate everyone making the adjustments so that we could be together tonight. So this evening, we're going to, we have some information to share with you, but it's mostly about hearing from you and giving you a chance to ask questions. Adina is going to start with an overview of the work that our 2 bureaus have been pursuing to date towards improving the delivery of natural resource services and functions that the city is responsible for. And then second, we're going to share with you a list of proposed deliverables and touch points and a timeline for the process moving forward. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at what we've done, and then spend some time looking at what we're proposing to do moving forward. I also want to acknowledge before I turn it over to Adina that the last time we came to these groups, all 3 of these groups, although it was in 3 separate meetings, we were working on something we referred to as the 90-day natural resource service delivery action plan. So if you can remember all those words, I'll be grateful. And that Adina is going to review those efforts. But that schedule, I want to acknowledge right out of the gate that schedule was very condensed, and our outreach and our communication efforts were really out of sync with the work. And we were trying to squeeze in meetings with requirements and deadlines that City Council had given us. So we acknowledge that we did the best we could, but that there were definitely some kind of awkward moments in the sequencing of the discussions. So with this next phase of work, we're coming to you now before we even start the work, before we even begin, to give you a preview of how we're proposing to approach it and to identify the opportunities for you to guide the work. We also plan to present this draft approach, this roadmap and work plan to City Council at a City Council work session scheduled for February 1st. So you're hearing this for the first time. We've just prepared this. We'll get your feedback, and then we'll be prepared to meet with City Council February 1st.
All right, before we kick off, just to let everybody know, we're gonna allow for the presentation to go full and complete, and then we'll ask questions. Otherwise, we may not get through the presentation. So I just want to make sure we say that, and please go ahead and get started. Thank you.
And I want to note that some of you may have heard the February 1st date for the first time. It was previously in late January, but it's been pushed back. So I just wanted to sort of flag that for those who were aware. So as you know from previous engagements with all 3 of the advisory bodies here today, the city directed Parks and BES, the Water Bureau, and PBOT to develop a work plan for integrating services related to nature, green infrastructure, urban watershed management, natural areas, urban tree canopy, and other areas of alignment. This work is ongoing, but has included 3 workshops with the directors of those bureaus, along with their subject matter experts, and facilitated by Catalysis LLC. The principal, Chris Caldwell, is here today, joining us in the back. You want to raise your hand? Yeah. To develop a project vision and consider opportunities for service delivery improvements. Contracting with Eco Northwest to conduct an assessment of how we currently provide natural resource services along with a best practices framework, and conducted Bureau leadership and advisory committee surveys on the results of the Eco Northwest report, which many of you participated in. We also reviewed 80 pages of public comments from 152 different respondents on the potential development of a new natural resources organizational unit in Portland and the importance of appointing a chief climate officer. And on November 1st, 2023, City Council held a hearing on Resolution 37635 to establish the city's future organizational structure. The resolution added citywide operational natural area and tree management to the service area with Parks and Recreation. We're here today to discuss our next steps for the implementation of both of those resolutions. So you can see on the slide, we have City Resolution 37609 and City Resolution 37635. We will be referring to those throughout the presentation, so hopefully everyone can keep those straight.
So Director Long and I want to acknowledge that the decision on November 1st was a shift in the anticipated process. And we want to use this moment that elevated the importance of natural resources to continue our collaborative work together. We heard from you and from others, the November 1st council meeting. We heard from you at that meeting and in subsequent letters and calls and requests for clarification. So the draft approach we're presenting today is in response to the expressed concerns and inquiries after the November 1st hearing. So I'd like to just say a few things about this blue sky diagram that we've been using. Some of you may be familiar with this. We are going to continue to define a North Star for Portland's natural resources that benefits the city and all of its inhabitants. And this graphic it's a draft graphic and just a basic framework that reflects input from the Water Bureau, as Adina mentioned, from Portland Parks and Recreation, PBOT, BES, and BPS. Directors, as well as our subject matter experts that participated in the discussions. So this graphic represents a shared vision for improved natural resource delivery, natural resources service delivery. And what's really important about this, I mean, I know there's a lot of words here and we could debate the percentages. I mean, we just have placeholders for the percentages, but what's important about this graphic is that it includes our commitment to boldly and comprehensively strengthen our systems of green and blue infrastructure. So you have 5 bureaus coming together and saying, we're committing to a shared vision and to be bold. We are also acknowledging that this is a once in a generational moment to create a system that provides a world-class community service and resources to protect our natural areas and invest in our communities and ultimately meet the city's goals. It also is a commitment to deliver healthy and clean and ecologically diverse systems providing wildlife habitat, access to nature, flood storage, and other ecosystem services. And it harnesses our commitment to our protection and our restoration tools to support Portland's recovery. It's Portland's long-term recovery. So it's really unprecedented for the 5 bureaus to come together to put this vision and commitment together. And while we recognize this is draft, today we want to hear from you about the progress we've made towards a work plan that will guide the implementation of both of the resolutions Adina mentioned. And so now we'll take a minute to review what we've been calling a roadmap and a work plan outline. And after that, we'll have time to hear your impressions. And we know that the time today is somewhat limited, but that there'll be future opportunities and we offer our ability to come back in future board meetings as the work plan evolves. So we anticipate delivering this work plan to the city chief administrative officer and city council in April, maybe sooner if possible. And that will provide more opportunities for engagement. So that's our timeframe as we're heading towards this work session February 1st, and then we want to have the draft work plan in and approved no later than April. And I think Adina, you'll take it next.
All right, board members and commissioners received the roadmap in advance of this meeting, but for those guests from the community who have not seen this document, I'd like to walk through it at a fairly high level. The graphic on the screen illustrates who's been participating and the timeline overview of the next steps in the process. The roadmap describes when and how Bureau leadership and subject matter experts have convened towards developing a project vision for Portland's natural resources and the process the project team and participants are using to develop the natural resource service delivery work plan. The work plan, in turn, will describe the actions the city needs to take to implement the direction of City Council from resolutions 37609 and 37635, which will result in final recommendations and service delivery decisions. The work plan will provide an overview of input gathered to date, along with a refined scope of the natural resource service delivery resolutions. That will include deliverables, milestones, constraints, and opportunities. Earlier, we talked about the employee and community engagement that was compiled, analyzed, and integrated by Eco Northwest. That feedback has and will continue to inform our work, with more to come. The organizational and budget proposal work is currently underway, and in fact, tomorrow, our teams will convene for a facilitated internal workshop to discuss the draft work plan and to begin to prepare for City Council work session scheduled for February 1. This work will also include identifying which functions and related resources are included as part of the resolution 37635, operational natural area and tree management. These decisions will inform the fiscal year 24-25 requested budget, which is due in mid-February, which means it's due 2 weeks prior to that. Depending on the outcome of that work, we will need to work together to create new or update existing policy rules and human resource updates related to any structural changes. Also, as noted earlier, there are many intersections among and between the various Bureau partners related to natural resources. For parks and BES in particular, interagency agreements related to our natural area collaborative effort and tree planting will need to be updated. Also, new agreements may need to be drafted to clarify regulatory funding sources and other obligations.
Right, okay. So that went by so quickly. We've been so efficient this evening. We're just like
we cut it down because we want to make sure that people had time to talk.
That's true. That's very true. So I can't emphasize enough our commitment to engage with you tonight and throughout the development of the work plan to incorporate your input and what you're hearing from the community and what's important to you. And for the rest of the time this evening, we'd like to invite your clarifying questions and any comments that you have. So we're ready to open the floor.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And just really quickly, a quick announcement. As of now, we have quorum for all of the advisory bodies. Thank you so much, staff, for letting us know. If you have any questions, either if you're online, please go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question or a comment. And if you're in person, again, if you're a board member, name tends to the side, or please raise your hand and please let us know which advisory board, which advisory body you're with and your name, please. Bonnie, go ahead.
Thank you, Corbin. I'm Bonnie Giosic. I'm a member of the Parks Board. Thank you so much for the presentation and providing this overview. Question with respect to the blue sky metrics that have the percentages of which are in play. I understand that Now, are the metrics themselves also in play at this point? Or, okay, so the ones that were identified there, cutting carbon, natural, whatever they all were, right? There was 6 or 7 of them.
Maybe we can go back to that. slide.
Yeah. Can we
jump in? Is it possible for us to also get the slide back?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, yeah, whoop,
Oh, sorry. I'll get there, I promise.
it was there.
There we go.
Thank you. So, is the thinking at this time, I mean, I think that for the most part, these are good metrics, but the question, of course, the question I have is, why these particular metrics? But is that gonna be part of this process to determine, not only the percentages here, but as well the metrics that are being quantified?
Yeah, they need to be validated. I mean, what we did was took some of the key data points that we know of, and one of the major ideas here is that there would be more than one bureau contributing to it, so that it was a way to have us all invest in a common goal. So it isn't that those 5 metrics are out of, they're not out of left field, but they are definitely data sets and things that we're interested in tracking, but we are also committed to getting feedback to refine those. And we certainly then need to also agree on the targets or the actual goals, the numeric.
Yeah, and then the
standards.
definitions therein as well, right? So like what
Right.
is restored, what is restored
Right.
watershed versus,
And I'll add that there's probably other plans, right, that we're not even touching upon. This is, I think, it's just scratches the surface.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these metrics are gonna be really important because, what we measure is gonna determine where the resource, both human and capital, ends up going, right? So I think that this is gonna be an important component, is to identify what the metrics are and then what the right threshold is that we're seeking. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I'm going to folks online. Bruce Nelson, go ahead with your question or comment.
I had a couple of questions. Natural resources, is that including street trees? That's the first question. The second question is, I'm a little confused about the natural resource service area as that it relates to the 5 different service areas that City Council approved, in which the bureaus that you're talking about are not all in the same recognized City Council service area. So I'm a little confused on the terms that are being used here. And pertaining to that, are you looking at consolidating city staff from one bureau into another bureau when you're looking at this natural resource service area? Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Could you please announce which advisory body you're with?
I'm with the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you so much.
I'll start, Bruce, this is Adina Long, Director of
Okay.
Parks. To your first question, I do believe that we will include street trees as included in natural resources as it relates to tree management, for sure. The second question, I'm sorry, was around how the 5 different bureaus will continue to.
Service areas, the city transition. Service area.
Yeah, I don't recall the question enough then to answer.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in. This is Dawn Uchiyama, Director at VES, and but maybe we didn't understand your question, so I want to make sure that I got it right. But I wrote down how the service area, natural resource service area, that language relates to the service areas that were created in the transition project that City Council approved. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, so it is a little confusing, I agree, so thank you we have a lot of language issues that we have to sort out here. But when we mentioned the 90-day work plan a little bit ago, and when we started to talk about natural resources, we used the term service area. That's how all the, I guess, city functions were labeled, these just different service areas. So it was word, I think, or term was used rather loosely. But then when we started to talk about how all city services would be organized, the transition team identified 5 service areas. And so really they're nested. So natural resource services would be nested in one of the 5, actually now 6 service areas, because we added a
That's
6th
right,
service
right.
area.
Okay.
So it's a loosely used term that basically allows us to bundle services accordingly.
And then to your third question around consolidating staff. So the resolution that City Council passed directed us to identify resources to be able to implement the citywide natural area and tree management. And so that's work, like I had mentioned, we're kicking off a meeting with staff tomorrow to really dig deep into what that means. As it relates to the larger natural resource service delivery work, which is going to continue beyond that, you know, I think that's to be seen, right? Like this, we're going through this, we've got a work plan, we're going to be looking at this deeply, both with staff and with community and our advisors. So, you know, I don't know, I can't really speak to what's going to be in the future, but certainly the concept, that has been discussed is both aligning or consolidating it for efficiency purposes. So, yeah, we'll have to see what's gonna pan out for that.
And then I'll just add that that's part of, I think, the work that we need to do in the work plan, because we have to look at our missions, our charter responsibilities, the utilities, BES and water. Our funding sources come from ratepayer dollars that have different requirements and responsibilities. So obviously parks and some of the other bureaus are general funded. So there are a number of things we have to look at. We have to look at the funding, we have to look at the regulations, we have to look at existing partnerships. So this is all part of the work that we're proposing to do in the work plan.
Thank you. Robin Castro, can you please announce your advisory body affiliation? Go ahead and ask your question or deliver your comment.
Hi, yes, this is Robin Castro. I am a member of PUB as well as the chair. And my question is actually, did we miss the presentation? Because it kind of feels like from our perspective, we were under the impression that this information session would start around 5:55. And as soon as I logged in, it kind of felt like the information session was at an end, and now we're to the Q&A point. So I just wanted to ask, did the conversation happen without a third of the advisory board attending?
Yeah, we did start a little bit early because the Parks Board agenda went a lot more quickly than we anticipated. So I believe we started about 5:46 or so, 5:47.
Okay, well, I absolutely understand with the agendas moving quicker or slower than usual. I'm a part of an advisory board, definitely understand that. But I just want to say that it's a bit disenfranchising to sell this meeting as a joint session where we're all coming together to learn the same information, which is my understanding is we were just all coming here to be in the same room to get the same information. But as soon as a third of the people who were a part of this meeting joined, the session, the informational part was already over. And it's going to kind of make it hard for us to have questions about information that was provided without us being here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Robin. I'm sorry, this is Adina, Director of Parks. I'm sorry, should I identified myself before? Something that we wanted to consider also is that I know that your regular meeting is January 18th, is that correct?
Yes, we have an upcoming PUB meeting on the 18th.
Yeah, so I would think that if Dawn and I are available, we could come back to the PUB meeting and do another presentation. Originally, we chose to, we asked Pub and USC to join the Parks Board meeting because our facilitator was unavailable on the 18th. But I think that we can sort of handle the information ourselves if you're, Dawn, if you're available. And to give, Robin, to give your board, you know, the information firsthand and with everyone in attendance, if that's acceptable to you.
I'm with that one, I'm not sure if I'm gonna say if it's acceptable or not, and that is specifically because I believe the point of the joint meeting, it was requested to have the joint information all together, and that way we could make sure that all of these advisory bodies were getting the same information at the same time. And so the idea that 2/3 of the boards would get the information and then Pub would just get theirs at their regular meeting, it's almost like, why is Pub here if we're not being fully included? Yes, I'll just let that be my piece on that one.
Thank you, Robin, and I'll just remind you also that this meeting is being recorded, and so we'll be happy to share not only the presentation materials, but also the recording with all attendees.
I'm gonna make a suggestion, since I am the chair, and I hear you from chair to chair, right? Can we have a quick a Cliff Note version of what was said, because it was a very short presentation to begin with. And I don't want this to be a tension between our advisory bodies, because I think we're all here for the same purpose. And I do hear you. So is there any way that we can do a quick summary?
I'm happy to try. I do want to apologize, Robin. I thought everyone was present, so I wasn't clear. We didn't do a head count, so I assumed that that Pub was already signed on, so I apologize.
And I got the information that we were at, that all the advisory board were at quorum.
So, but I'm happy to recap if that makes sense.
Yes, or and if you can point folks to the information that was either given out to each of the groups, so we can make sure that nobody is missing anything. Because I don't believe anything was said in the presentation that wasn't already in the notes that was sent out to for at least I know on my end, the Portland Parks Board. And you can let me know if that information was relayed to the other advisory or the other bodies here.
The agenda and the roadmap were sent to all invitees.
All right, and so we all have the same information.
Same documents,
Okay.
correct.
So if I understand correctly, there's not more information that was presented than what was in those documents.
I think I think the thing that is most relative that was not included was the work plan development, the primary deliverables, which is being shared on the screen right now.
If you can just walk us through that really quickly. And again, my apologies to Robin. Would that satisfy you for the situation that we're in right now, understanding that it's not it's the best that we can do with the time that we have?
I do think a Cliff Notes version would assist the Pub to just catch us up to where everyone else is at. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience and
great. I'll go over the roadmap overview first, maybe. Great. So the roadmap was sent in advance. It basically describes when and how Bureau leadership and subject matter experts have convened towards developing a project vision for natural resources and how we're using and how we're going to develop the Natural Resource Service Delivery Work Plan. So here, this image shows the different teams that are involved in the work and the timeline, including today, January 9th, through to April 2024, wherein the work plan will be delivered to the Chief Administrative Officer, Mike Jordan. And then for work plan development, these are our primary deliverables, but I'll just say that we're working on the milestones, constraints and opportunities. And when we return to Pub, Urban Forestry Commission and Parks Board, we will have a more fleshed out work plan for folks to provide feedback on. But the work plan currently includes an overview of input gathered to date, along with a refined scope of the Natural Resource Service delivery resolutions that will include, as I mentioned, the deliverables, milestones, constraints and opportunities. There's going to be and has been employee and community engagement around this work that have been compiled and analyzed and integrated. And we will continue in that vein and continue to request for feedback to continue to inform our work. The organizational and budget proposal, numbers 3 and 4, that work is currently underway. I mentioned, I don't know if you were, who was on the line, but we are meeting tomorrow, BES and Parks teams, along with our respective financial managers, to have a facilitated internal workshop to discuss the draft work plan and then also to begin preparations for the city council work session that's scheduled on February 1st. And I'll note that, depending on the outcome of all of this work, identifying which functions and related resources are included as a part of that resolution, those decisions will help inform the fiscal year 24-25 budget. And we anticipate that depending on the outcome of that work, we'll have to do some work around policies and rules and human resource updates so that they are in alignment with any structural changes that are made. Parks and BES have the most amount of interagency agreements between them related to natural areas, and in particular a natural area collaborative MOU and a tree planting MOU. So those will need to be updated likely, and there might be an opportunity to draft new agreements as well. Because we're, as Dawn mentioned, we're gonna need to clarify our regulatory and funding sources and other obligations that each respective bureau has in this area. And then I think the last piece is that, we recognize that this work really entails developing and implementing a change management practices and ensuring that we communicate often regarding how we develop and implement the work plan.
Great, and I would like to add, this is Dawn Uchiyama, Director at BES. Again, apologies for this snafu, but I would like to add just a little bit of context. So Adina went over the proposal to move forward. We talk about the roadmap as kind of, like the directional intention, and then the work plan are the detailed tasks that we're going to do. So that's looking forward, but I do want to say for Pub's benefit that Adina had pointed out earlier that we had 2 resolutions that we're working with. And the first resolution was this 90-day work plan or action plan that we were kind of forced to work in a very tight schedule and had some challenges with scheduling meetings and getting timely feedback. And so we are we wanted to acknowledge that the work that we did last year was not, I think, scheduled and is in sync as it needs to be moving forward. And the other thing is that the second ordinance that was approved on November 1st was a shift in the anticipated process. And so we really want to take this opportunity now that so much attention has been generated around the November 1st decision to elevate the importance of this discussion and to really emphasize our intention to work collaboratively moving forward. So we heard from Pub members, we heard from other board members Parks. And in subsequent letters and calls and requests after the November 1st meeting that folks needed clarification and had questions. So the draft that we presented, what Adina just went over, was in response to the concerns and the inquiries that we received to date. So I want to provide a little context for how we got to this proposed path forward. So thank you very much, Robin, for giving us that opportunity.
Corbin.
I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Corbin.
no worries. Thank you so much. And again, my apologies, Robin. We've been very fluid today because we've been getting different information. I hope that satisfies the process moving forward. And I'm going to call on Chris Richard. Please announce your affiliation with your the advisory body that you're with.
My name is Chris Richard and I'm part of PUB. I'm a voting member. And my question is after the Anderson lawsuit, that's how PUB came into existence, because the council had requested funding from BES and from water. And then the Anderson lawsuit happened and general fund had to refund the bureaus. Has that been addressed yet by legal? It was my understanding that legal hasn't come through and said that what the council wants to do is legal. Has that been addressed yet directly from legal? Not from the political part, but from legal? And does everyone understand what I'm talking about with the Anderson lawsuit? I'm sure Don does, but does the rest?
Thank you, Chris.
Chris, would you like to say more? Because this is not just a meeting for the folks in this room, but it is a
Okay.
public meeting. So if you want to put in a little education into that, I
Okay.
think folks would appreciate that.
Pretty much the council had said that BES funds had to be used for things that were not part of our purview. And it has proven difficult over the years to use BES funds for things that were not directly ratepayer, things that were only the ratepayers should be paying for. It should, so they were trying to use ratepayer funds for things that really should be paid by general fund. And that is my concern here, is that we're attempting to create this natural resources, which is great. It's a great idea. But as we've talked about, the color of money matters. I'm an accountant for BES. And so I'm all about the color of money. And has legal gone through and said it is okay to use our money for this function? Because it seems like we put the cart before the horse here. If legal hasn't said that this is okay, and the council has told us that it's okay to do things in the past and has lost and spent millions of dollars, had to give back to BES, has that been addressed yet?
Thank you, Chris. And it looks.
I'll let Dawn go first.
Go ahead.
So thank you, Chris. Dawn Uchiyama, Director of BES. I want to say that we did seek legal counsel. We met with the city attorneys that represent both parks and BES. What we asked them was the ordinance binding, and resolution binding, and that we should proceed with this direction. The response back from the city attorney was yes, that it is a binding resolution and that we should proceed. But the specifics of what services are being provided and how the transfer of money would occur needed to be reviewed. So the detail of that has not yet been worked out. My understanding is that any services that BES pays other bureaus for, it is literally, we pay by service. So we don't prepay and we don't pay if the work's not done. So it has to include a very detailed description of the work, the requirements, and the funding is only provided when the work is complete. So that much I do know. We have not yet decided on the specific services yet. And I think that will be an ongoing conversation about whether it falls into, and being really clear that we, the Anderson lawsuit is a legal decision that we have all learned from, and we have no interest in repeating or heading into that territory again. So that's certainly the overarching frame for how we will be transferring any resources. to any work group, not just parks.
Thank you, Director Long.
Yeah, so I'm by no means a connoisseur of the Anderson lawsuit, although I've heard about it many times. And one thing I do know is that the outcome and the direction following the lawsuit applies to in all of the city of Portland. So it's not just a BES specific, right? Directive, I guess is the best way to put it. So I think we're all very cognizant of that. I don't even say challenge, but just like that reality. And so appreciate you bringing it up. And it's definitely one of those sort of financial, the obligations that we talked about. And that, you know, Parks isn't just general fund funded either, right? We've got local option levy funding, we have trust funds. So we're all very cognizant of the color of money, and this is something that we're gonna have to work through. And that work starts tomorrow in earnest.
Thank you, Director Long. The next person I have is Bob.
Bob Solinger, and I'm a member of the former member of the Parks Board. Couple of comments, I guess. I'm not sure there's a question in here, but a couple of comments. One, I think there's a serious trust issue here at this point. What happened in the November council meeting felt like an end run around process. We all knew about 37609. None of us knew about 37635, which put the cart ahead of the horse, did not have any analysis on the impacts on staff, the impacts on budgets, the legality, the impacts on services. That was announced a couple of days before, a day before. And so that felt like a real end run. You have 3 advisory boards here where people spend a heck of a lot of time. To have that come out of the blue is, to me, a real problem. I think it also has distracted from the primary need here, which is to look at this holistically. The first resolution, in terms of looking at all the natural resource service areas and putting them all together, that to me is the big work that needs to happen. That is the priority. We need to really figure out how all the pieces fit together. Natural areas and trees are important, but they're not the whole picture. We have Superfund, we have green infrastructure, we have floodplains, we have brownfields, we have a massive number of things that need to be worked out. And to separate those two out and put them front and center without any analysis, again, I think is a big problem. So my 2 requests are, one, prioritize the big picture. I think we need a natural resource unit in the infrastructure service area that brings everything together, not necessarily moves programs, but connects programs in a really meaningful, substantive, holistic way. And then number 2, as far as moving resources around, and we're talking about not just natural assets, we're talking about human assets as well. I really want to hear a firm commitment, because there's a lot of general sort of feel-good bureaucratic terminology here, but what I really want to know is, following up on Chris, that it's legal. We've had a real problem with that historically, that the funding is going to be there to not only sustain these things in the long term, but to build upon them. Parks has a huge number of natural areas that are in poor condition. You're taking on more. How are you going to get them all into good condition? And that the regulatory compliance piece, which has lived at BES, which is absolutely essential, is really going to be met, and that we're not going to be out of regulatory compliance. So I'll stop there, but I think this, to me right now, is not compelling or convincing that we are actually back on track.
Thank you, Bob. Response, directors. Just to make it clear for everybody in the room, I have J.R. Lilly, Karen Williams, Adrian Weinstein, Alexis Reif, and Megan Van Mark. Is there anybody in the room that has any questions or comments that they would like to make, so I can get you on the list? All right, thank you. J.R. Lilly, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. J.R. Lilly, he, him, his, Commissioner on the Urban Forestry Commission. And just a couple questions, because it looks like on the calendar, the advisory bodies will be engaged in this process again in March. So I think if we don't have answers for the questions, my questions now, it would be something I would be interested to prep for the March engagement as well. I'm curious on other public engagements that are happening with this plan. Is it just engaging the advisory boards, or is there other community meetings or focus groups or anything else that's going to be engaged? And I'm curious on the equity lens that this is going to be working through. I'm pretty familiar with Portland Parks and Rec if they're going through the project, the process of their equity lens and the steps they ask, and particularly in how it's going to impact neighborhoods in East Portland and some of the other marginalized communities. But since it's cross bureau, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Is there an agreed upon process on that, and how are we going to be looking at that? Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, JR. I would say that the community engagement around the development of the work plan is staff, our bureau partners, our advisory bodies, and the city council. Then implementing the work plan, the community engagement has to grow to other stakeholders. And we do not have that community engagement plan developed yet, but I think we agree that it needs to be more robust. We heard that loud and clear. So I hope that answers that part of the question. And you're right, Parks does have a very robust racial equity lens that we employ both for programming as well as for capital projects. And I'm sure that the Bureau of Environmental Services has the same or similar. And so I think being able to crosswalk those two respective tools to come up with a process that we're all comfortable with shouldn't be too heavy of a lift. And we certainly want to center and focus equity in this work. So yeah, I don't see that being a point of contention.
And I can add that BES and Water just recently created a equity tool that in many ways is influenced by the work of Parks. So it's tailored for the utilities, but I think you would find it very familiar. So I think bringing both of the tools and processes together, the lenses together, will bring in even more focus for us.
Thank you. Karen Williams.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And Karen Williams from the Portland Utility Board. My question follows on the opportunities for the advisory bodies to be engaged and influence and provide input. And specifically, my question is, can the advisory bodies be invited to provide public testimony at the work sessions? So looking for earlier involvement and engagement, certainly than March. March is quite a ways off.
My understanding, sorry, Karen, this is Adina, Parks and Rec. My understanding is that the city council work session is not a public hearing opportunity. But I think that, well, I know that we welcome feedback before then anyway. So I know that I gave up my Parks Bureau director email. It was on the last slide. And so we wanted to open that up for folks to utilize in the interim. I don't know if we do have city council staff here who might be able to maybe provide some more information about the work session, but that's my understanding.
I can answer that question. We can have invited testimony, so council offices can invite. Sorry, Michelle Rodriguez with Chief of Staff for Commissioner Mingus Maps. We can have invited testimony to the work session. So they're not public in the sense that there isn't a public as Adina was saying, there isn't a time for public testimony. Thank you. But we can provide invitations, and which if Pub is requesting that, Karen, and I can double check with Robin, we can provide that invitation to the utility board from our office to invite to speak.
If you're gonna be inviting the utility board, I think all of the advisory boards would like the invitation to join it.
Yeah, and I can work with my counterpart in Commissioner Ryan's office, who's behind you. Who's right behind you?
Wonderful. You were just on my screen. Great, thank you for coming. Adrian, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Sorry about that, had to get off mute. I had a question about two things. So the Blue Sky Vision, how much work has gone into that as that's still in draft phase? A few folks have mentioned there appear to be maybe some missing elements. Green spaces in general stuck out for me. I'll buy a tree canopy is probably the most important. So, how did you get to your top items? And just want to reiterate, it seems to me that that's almost the most important thing. What is that overall vision? And as part of that, I actually wanted to commend this process because this has been sorely missing. These bureaus have been at cross purposes and competing without a vision for, what do we need overall? Anyway, those are my two thoughts.
And as we did address, this is Dawn Uchiyama, BES, the Blue Sky Vision is draft. And it definitely needs more refinement and more consideration. The big idea was really that we were sharing the goals, that we would all contribute. It wasn't like one bureau or one work group would be responsible for one goal. So initially we looked for kind of the obvious things, the highest level things that we could all contribute to. So that work needs to be refined for sure.
It might be helpful to have sort of guesstimate timelines for each piece of this. I know you have a timeline for the work plan being delivered the end of April, but what's the whole project going to take?
And I'll just add a comment. Although we don't have the final dates, this will definitely be iterative and ongoing. And right now we kind of see making improvements really with every fiscal year. So that we're really aiming for our budget windows to make proposals and to have a due process and to make those decisions. So I think you can see some maybe bigger changes up front, and then that it would be an ongoing refinement. And I think that's true for all of city government as we head into this new form.
Thank you, good to hear.
Thank you. Megan Vandermark?
Can I actually let Roberta go before me?
Absolutely, Roberta. Please go ahead, please, and please state your affiliation.
Okay, thank you. I'm Roberta Jortner, and I'm a member and co-chair of the Urban Forestry Commission. And I think I want to expand a little bit on Bob Salinger's point that as I think about value added and the opportunity here, I think that, how this all comes together in a big picture is where we have an opportunity to get beyond where we've been before in the past, where our green and blue infrastructure has always been struggling to be on a level playing field with the gray infrastructure. But we've really made progress in the city in integrating green into gray for Clean Water Act compliance, bioswales, more and more with street trees, and PBOT's doing some great work with pilots with curb cutouts. And I'd like to see, as you think about how the pieces are going to come together, having a natural resource delivery unit as part of an infrastructure, under an infrastructure umbrella with an infrastructure asset management type model, and funding to the extent of legality would be a huge leap forward. What we wouldn't want to do, I think, is separate. We need to recognize the integration that's taken place between green infrastructure and gray infrastructure as part of our overall service delivery to the city, with our roads, with our water system, with our sewer and wastewater and stormwater and urban forestry and climate. All those pieces are together can be symbiotic. But so I love the idea of elevating natural resources to a collaborative, coordinated, in sync unit. But I also don't want to see them fully pulled out of the other infrastructure components that they've become integrated with, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to flag that, because I think, all the bureaus and all their programs have different, increasingly those things, it's not firm borders between green infrastructure and gray infrastructure and the rest of city service. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. If I can dovetail, because I have had my name up for a little bit.
Call on yourself.
And I'm very glad that you brought up that the connection between the blue, the green, and gray infrastructure, and thinking about a holistic integrated urban ecology. And I would love if we can get some a glossary of terms, because we use a lot of words of sustainability and resilience, and but to what end? So are we trying to make things better by keeping them the same? Are we kind of trying to build in biodiversity? I would like to see some of the sort of North Star aspirations that's going to come with this project as well, or this process as well. So I just want to jump in and say that. And then I am going to return it back to Megan. Go ahead.
Thanks. And I do appreciate the opportunity to all come together and learn more about what y'all do, even though I got a lot to learn yet. I'm just kind of, and I knew Roberta would have some comment that was brilliant. I'm also on the Urban Forestry Commission that I would want to mull on before I spoke. But I think the question that I have is, like, clearly it seems like the work plan process is to identify how this is going to be funded and how things are going to be obligated. So I won't ask about that because it seems like it's not yet determined. But I do want to really think about, like, exactly what Roberta is speaking to is the holistic approach. And I think maybe for the Todds and the Adinas who have listened to these questions a million times, right? Like, we have worked so hard, I think, across all of our groups to elevate green infrastructure, to put it on that same playing field. And so I think as we move forward, right, in a collaborative, like right now we have this model that's going to be kind of bringing together two entities, but I know that there's been this vision to give it its own, i.e. urban ecology, if that's, the word that was just used, to give it that space. And so as we work plan for what is now, I'm curious how we keep alive this holistic approach to maybe being able to draw it out as its own moving forward. So I'm just curious, like, is there the possibility within this process to have a both and? So someday it would be its own holistic entity. I just don't want that opportunity lost within this. So I'm curious how we're folding that in.
I would say that the work plan, hi Megan, it's Adina, sorry.
Hi,
I would say that the work plan is that opportunity. So, like you said, it feels like there's these two different actions happening, right? And that is true, right? We have this one resolution that was voted on and approved back in February, March of 2023. We had been working on that for the last almost year. We had 37365 that was approved on November 1. That was unanticipated, but we're still going to move forward with that. But the work plan, what we've talked about today, that's going to continue to have a conversation about this whole holistic view of natural resource service delivery. And
I don't want to bury the lead because I don't know what that is, right? But we've committed to continuing that work, and that's what that's what the work plan is about. And that's why all of this input is super valuable, because we're not done. The work continues. So appreciate your comments, and thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
And can I add?
Yes,
also?
go
Megan,
ahead.
quickly, I'll just say that the work plan will include the other bureaus, so Water, PBOT, and BPS. So it definitely will take on a broader scope. It won't just be about the services Parks and BES provides.
Thank you. As part as the Portland Parks and Recreation Board, we do have to take this time to ask if there's any public comments. Wonderful. Go ahead, please. And please state your name.
Oh, my name is Jenny O'Connor. I'm a Portland citizen. I'm responding specifically, actually, I agree totally on the community engagement process. I think it needs to be more than what's in the current road proposed work plan, which I just saw today. I don't have any particular suggestions other than I know that what you were saying, Director Long, is the amount of comments that you received about this and about the climate officer. You know, there's obviously a lot of community input, and I don't think it's enough to just put a posting on your webpage saying contact us. I think there needs to be outreach. I think that's really important, especially given how many people responded to this and the implications of how this is going to move forward down the road. And then specifically regarding the proposed assumptions for final work plan contents, items 6 and 7, the proposed assumptions is what stumped me. One was consider the role of the Chief Sustainability Officer in relation to the work plan. And the other is aligned with the City Climate Action Plan and the Climate Emergency Work Plan. There should be no assumption about these should be included. You know, I spoke at the November 1st meeting in support of the climate officer. Over 960 public comments came in supporting climate officer, and the response to that was that the current Chief Sustainability Officer was elevated. Question is, you know, what is going to be that particular position? Is that position going to remain at the city administrative level? I think it's comparable to the equity officer. We need somebody at the highest level of leadership to oversee something like this. Given all the bureaus involved and given the scope and, you know, the future, I'd like to see a climate lens in there, which I'm sure you all have thought about or maybe, but I just want to reiterate that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'll just as a small response, I think that it's categorized under assumptions because that role and that position does not report to either of us, right? And so the conversation will continue with our bureau partners, and that is one area where we think that we want to just do a little bit more discovery and investigation. So appreciate that. And yes, to more and better community engagement.
Thank you. Just to note our time, we're at 6:49 and I have 2 more speakers, Sabrina and then Alana. Is there anybody else that would like to ask a question or provide a comment? Great. Thank you. Sabrina, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Wilson. I'm on the Parks Board, also the chair of the Community Engagement Working Group. I am speaking in regards to community engagement, similar to what JR said, and I believe Karen spoke to as well. And so I want to make sure that I kind of have got this right, because overall my question is, where are the opportunities for us as our different groups to engage if that's the extent of the engagement outside of city staff and council and things like that. Because what I'm hearing is that we have this meeting, there's an opportunity to be involved at council in the form of invited testimony. But then are there budget decisions happening in February? It seems like there's a lot of work that's being done between now and that March or April council session, potentially including budget decisions. So where's the opportunity for us in our respective roles on these different bodies to engage in all of this? If the comment was made earlier, I think in response to JR, that there's not going to be a lot of broader public engagement outside of these groups. One of the things that as the Parks Board, we wrote in our letter when we were looking at the draft, charter reform, our fourth point was that Portlanders must have sufficient time to be a part of these conversations. And if we are the extent of the Portlanders outside of city and council, what does that look like? And I'm also, again, trying to wrap my head around the timeline that I might have heard that there are budget decisions being made in between the time that we are able as our bodies to engage. And so if I could get some clarity around that and opportunities that we'll be able to hear back and be a part of that process, and then other Portlanders can listen in and use public comment to weigh in that way.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Well, Sabrina, this is Adina. So we've committed to come back to the respective advisory bodies in March at whatever meeting, whether it's a joint meeting or separate. We still have to work out those details. And then in terms of the budget question, so we have budget advisory committees, as you know, Parks Board has, and we'll be meeting on Thursday for our second budget advisory committee meeting. All budget decisions roll through that committee. So that's another opportunity for the Parks Board to provide feedback and opine. And then I just also want to remind folks that we are going to be discussing a draft work plan on February 1st at the council work session. We're committed to submitting a final work plan to the CAO in April. So we do have some more time to collect feedback and have it inform the work plan. And then I also I think I'd just be remiss to not say that a work plan can evolve. I mean, we're talking about natural resources in the city of Portland and multiple bureaus and stakeholders, external stakeholders who are interested in this work. Like it's not the Constitution, right? It's going to evolve, and as our community has as well. So I just wanted to, I don't want folks to feel like, I know that this has been rushed, right? And I know that this is fast. And quite frankly, we're dealing with this on many levels for many initiatives related to the transition. But we're going to try to provide as much opportunity for input as possible. And I just don't want folks to feel like the work plan, that finalizing it is the end of it, because implementing it is really where the work is. So.
And I'll just add a quick point that just to really dial in on what's happening in February versus the work plan. I think there are expectations that resources or budget decisions would be made for February 16th. That's the day the budget is due. But I do have to say that we're not in agreement yet about what or when or if we can make that happen. So I do think that is part of the discussions we'll have tomorrow and part of the discussions we'll have in the next few weeks, because there were stated expectations around changes happening, but there is, I think, a mixed review on whether or not we're going to be able to make those changes in time for the budget. There are a lot of competing interests for the time to make those changes. So I want to be transparent that there's not total agreement right now on that.
Todd, do you want to add?
Just in addition to what Todd Lofgren, Deputy Director at Portland Parks and Recreation, in addition to what both the directors said, I just put in the chat. The mayor just released all the budget dates. So you've got the utility rate hearings in there and all the budget hearings and all the dates going through June. So there's lots of opportunity for public testimony at different forums. I appreciate everything what the directors just said, just adding to that.
You. Yeah. What I'm hearing is that everybody wants to be included into this process. Is there a way of setting up some sort of human infrastructure that includes all three bodies, that will have representatives that are constantly at these meetings and reporting back to the board people, the board on our side and the commissioners, because we are only meeting once a month. And it sounds like we need a lot more information on a lot more touch points. So could you consider creating either ad hoc representatives that can be at all of these meetings and make it as transparent, as public as possible, so we can do our job as the public forum to make sure that community members are also getting this information. So willing to work with you. I hope you can think through that. And I'm going to give the last word to my co-chair, Alana. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Dr. Corbin. I want to acknowledge, because we heard from a few people, the concerns about where this natural area management unit landed. And the Parks Board actually was very supportive of green infrastructure and land management being paired as we move forward. I hope that the Parks Board's support for having green infrastructure and land management together doesn't take away from the importance of continuing to build on our green infrastructure in our gray infrastructure. And as you all put together the work plan, I think there's an opportunity to think about how we actually elevate green infrastructure with this placement, that we continue to do that with this placement, and that we do so in a way that acknowledges the need for climate resilience, that continues to build on the equity work. And I hope that the work plan doesn't add to the tension that it sounds like there may be between some of our boards because of positions on what was most important as we thought about natural areas and how we look at that moving forward. And that this is actually an opportunity to bring those different visions together and make sure that the work is more than the sum of its parts, as we now have a space to house this work that we didn't have before.
We have 2 more minutes. Any questions or comments?
Dr. Corbin, I'd just like to comment on your suggestion of having a regular, some sort of stakeholdering set arrangement in the project team. So I think we can talk, we talked a little bit about this, of having representatives from each group participate in the process altogether, so that it's not just touch points, but you're in the project team and you're going along with. So definitely we'll talk to Chris and the project team and look at how instead of just catch as catch can on each of your agendas and trying to bring them together, but to have representatives come with us on the journey, I think is a really good point.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for quite engaging meeting. Of course, we probably could talk about this for another hour or 2. But with that, I'm going to adjourn our meeting at 6:59 p.m. Thank you so much, folks.
I did not.